Hello and welcome returning fans and newcomers alike to another lightning round edition of Grudge Match, the show that pits comic characters against each other to determine who rules the graphic medium. In this special lightning round episode, we're gonna blitz our way through 3 often requested matchups that for one reason or another isn't quite right for a full matchup, but still deserve an explanation as to what would happen and why. So wasting no time and jumping into the first of our lightning round matchups, it is the often requested matchup of the Dark Knight versus the Man of Web's Batman versus Spider-Man. And what this fight boils down to quite simply is this is superpowers versus no superpowers. And that deserves some explanation because Batman is certainly notorious for being able to fight superpowered villains one-on-one and winning more often than not. But most of the time that amounts to Batman fighting mentally inferior foes like Croc, who he just has to outsmart, or superpowered foes with easily exploitable weaknesses like Clayface. He just has to find a way to freeze or harden Clayface into making him immobile. That's not really the case with Spider-Man, who is not mentally deficient or does not have any easily exploitable weaknesses with his superpowers. Spider-Man is one of the smartest superheroes around with a literal genius-level IQ himself, plus a lot of experience at fighting vastly more physically powerful foes than himself. And the reason Spider-Man often can fight so many greatly powered enemies is because he fights very smart. He fights intelligently, and that allows him to take on much stronger opponents himself. So what Batman has in his corner with being smart and thinking around his opponents and fighting smart, well, that's something Spider-Man does himself quite a bit. And then when it comes down to ability, Spider-Man just outclasses Batman in every regard. He is vastly faster, so much faster that no matter what Batman does in terms of throwing batarangs or fighting skills, throwing punches, kicks, whatever, Spider-Man can dodge any and all of them, especially with the spider sense in effect, allowing him to see danger coming before it happens. And his reflexes greatly enhanced to the point where he could, even though he may not have the martial arts training of Batman, outfight Batman. As well as stronger and more durable. Even if Batman did land a solid punch on Spider-Man, he's so durable that it wouldn't even affect him. It would probably hurt Batman more than it would hurt Spider-Man because people have broken their hands trying to punch Spider-Man before. Add to that the utility of Spider-Man's webbing in order to web up Batman in a variety of ways, blind him, shooting it in his eye, which is something Spider-Man often likes to do to opponents. And Spider-Man just has too much power, too much versatility, experience, and intelligence for any non-powered superhero to come up against and win. Now, this might seem a little counterintuitive because there was a previous match where Spider-Man 2099 lost to Batman Beyond. However, the high level of super tech and mechanized suit that Batman Beyond was using afforded him practically a level of superpowers in and of itself. So in this matchup, Spider-Man's powers, genius-level intellect, and combat experience is going to overshine Batman and put him head and shoulders above the Dark Knight. Moving on to our next lightning round matchup, it is one that is between characters who are very similar in a lot of ways, one being a knockoff of the other, and it's Wolverine versus Lobo. Lobo was created in reaction to Wolverine to be a sort of parody character of Wolverine, and then he got very popular himself. And this matchup often gets requested not only because Lobo is a parody of Wolverine, but also because the characters have fought in the Marvel vs. DC crossover story. Now, while this was a very entertaining read, it's not canon to what would actually be present in the storylines of either universe, meaning that it happened in a offshoot universe. It didn't technically happen to the real Wolverine and the real Lobo, and it doesn't really count as to what would happen if they were to actually fight. Also, because it was fan voted, turned it into more of a popularity contest than an actual explanation of what would happen should these characters meet. The fact of the matter is that Lobo outclasses Wolverine in every regard. He is vastly stronger, capable of going blow for blow with characters like Superman. He's vastly tougher, being able to survive almost any kind of damage. Not only because of his souped-up healing factor, which also is better than Wolverine's, but also because he is literally immortal and has been rejected by the afterlife, by both heaven and hell. So Lobo literally cannot die. Now, while the same may be able to be said for Wolverine with his healing factor in effect, that doesn't mean Lobo wouldn't be able to defeat him. They may not be able to kill each other, but Lobo could, in effect, grab Wolverine and just chuck him into space. Or Lobo wouldn't even have to go that far. He could just use his strength and grab Wolverine, take his chain that he often uses, wrap him up, and leave him tied up on the floor. And that would technically be a way to win the fight, as Wolverine would be completely immobilized. But basically, Lobo's vastly enhanced physical strength and durability would allow him to use Wolverine like a rag doll and win the fight in any of a number of ways. The third and final matchup in this lightning round edition of Grudge Match is the pairing up of Iceman versus Mr. Freeze. Iceman, one of the original X-Men characters, versus the Batman villain Mr. Freeze, both being ice-based characters. Iceman is the quintessential ice character. He is regarded as an Omega-level mutant in the Marvel Universe. And what that means is, he is a mutant of such incredible power, he is essentially able to destroy the entire world if he wanted to with his powers. And how that would work for Iceman is, his mastery over cold is so great that he could cause an entire new ice age to occur and destroy all life on the planet if he really focused his power. He doesn't do that because obviously he doesn't want to do such a thing, but that is the level of ice control that Iceman has. He could cause a global climate shift. And even more than that, he can turn his entire body into ice, and when he does so, he becomes completely immortal while in his ice form. You can shatter him down into ice chunks and crystals on the floor, and he can reform from that. More so than that, he can create living creatures out of ice. He can create giant ice creatures, and he can send his consciousness into them. So you could essentially be staring at a dozen ice giants, and he is inside each and every one of them simultaneously. So that becomes just a character that becomes almost impossible to destroy. How would you kill something like that can reform once you destroy it? And Mr. Freeze, on the other hand, is actually very susceptible to damage. He has to keep himself encased in a cryo suit, because if it gets broken and he gets exposed to anything above sub-zero temperatures, that will harm him and kill him pretty quickly. But Iceman wouldn't even have to do that, because with that level of power, he could just encase Mr. Freeze in a block of ice, and Mr. Freeze would be stuck inside of it. He'd still be alive, he wouldn't be killed by it, but he wouldn't be able to break his way out or move. Or Iceman wouldn't even have to do that, just turn himself into an ice giant and step on Mr. Freeze, and that would destroy him. So that also tends to be the way almost any fight between Iceman and any DC-based ice character would go, like Killer Frost or something like that. It's the same thing. Even though they can shoot ice beams and create ice creations, their level of control over ice powers is nowhere near as powerful as Iceman. So the Omega level mutant factor and the versatility of Iceman's control over his ice form and ice manipulating powers puts him head and shoulders above any other ice generating character among any comic universe. So that's going to wrap up this Grudge Match Lightning Round edition. Message me down below with any other suggestions for quick run-throughs for future Lightning Round episodes. And we'll catch you next time on the next edition of Grudge Match.